Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, we are about to approve, or, in theory, the Board of Commissioners will approve all of the steps necessary to get the Deer Creek Bridge fixed, which if you go out, oh my gosh, Muddy Valley Road, and so you're like heading into the Coast Range, there's a county park on the left that includes a significant area that's a Kincaid's Lupin mitigation bank. So it's a big wet meadow and upland that we've essentially dedicated just to the oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of it, the butterfly. So Kincaid's Lupin, there's a lot of it there, but the bridge that goes to one house and to the park was severely failing, and it's a funny situation in that it's just one house and the park, but the state, we proposed it to the state for their local bridge repair program, and so they're going to be covering 90% of the cost of replacing it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Which is huge. And in the meantime, the old Sheridan Road was transferred from the city, or from the county to the city of McMinnville. It's the one that goes out from Lowe's out to the coast from McMinnville. And they took over the road, and we had a brand new pedestrian bridge there. So we pulled that out when the city took it over, and it's been sitting without a purpose. But we are going to build a footing for it and put it across Deer Creek so that folks who are coming to visit the park during construction can continue to access the park. There's just like a little parking area on one side of the bridge. But we're going to keep it in place so that if people want to, they can park on one side and do the cool walk across the creek over into it.
That's nice. And my mind is just thinking, when you do an improvement, even necessary like that, when you're talking about an area that has been, you're protecting it for these species, that the environmentals and the checks that go into that construction are they take so much detail, like certain times a year, and you need to have someone on site, and it's so important. But it's just another one of those things that it's not a quick process like it might seem going forward. Like, we got the funding, it's approved, let's go. It's really like, okay, we need to do this right. We have one shot. So. Truly.
But because, you and I have been on the Mid-Willamette Area Committee on Transportation, and so we've heard the infrastructure plan and the money that's coming to the state. And you've heard that the local bridge replacement fund has been bumped up. It didn't really occur to me that that would help us in any way, but it turns out that the ODOT staff, they, every city and every county puts in their recommendations, like, hey, these are our priority bridges rated by their level of failingness and their average daily trips. And we got two bridges that were funded, the Deer Creek Park Bridge and Patty Lane, which is near you. But they recently went back to us and they were like, hey, by the way, we do have money to go further down that list now. And another one of your bridges came up. So we're in the process now. The ODOT team is going to go out and do a site visit, but likely we'll have a 90% of the cost covered of the bridge that connects Pike Road to Old Railroad Grade Road northwest of Yamhill. And it's like a special junction because log trucks go through there. The city of Hillsborough, they go up to their water system that way, and it crosses the North Fork of the Yamhill. It's just one of those places where if you didn't have the bridge, it would be really bad, but nobody even notices the bridge. I mean, I guarantee you that nobody even notices that there is a bridge there. They just go across it.
So my husband's parents live right there. So I have noticed the bridge many times. 20
That's
years of noticing
hilarious.
the bridge.
Yeah, so it's funny because it's super short and it's really wide. And I think it's because there's a lot of commercial trucks that go through there and a lot of log
It
trucks.
just seems like the road.
Yeah, it just seems like it's the road. Exactly. And there's gravel on it because of the gravel coming to and fro. But that'll be a huge one. Just it'll be huge to have that replaced.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear when they said a 600-year replacement cycle. Like, bridges are so important, and to recognize that that's everyone doing their best and it's taking that long. So
truly, yeah. Well, so that's the big bridge news of the day, and it's very exciting for us too. It's not nearly as big as your bridge, just on the edge of town.
Well, it will be very impactful for the city, this bridge work, just the closure,
oh my gosh,
but having a safe, reliable bridge for.
Yeah. And so the water line gets moved, right? So it's probably already been moved, or it is being moved to a temporary crossing, right?
So interestingly enough, in the engineering plans, they are going to take down as much as the bridge as possible, leaving our water line while they start the construction of the new bridge. So it won't be until the last minute that they will then construct a temporary bridge. So
got it.
My understanding is if we go to look, a couple weeks out or whatever their timeline is, the only thing left of the old bridge will be what is holding our water transmission line.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of brings on some anxiety, but they know what they're doing.
Right. They do this. Yeah. And I feel like at our last, maybe it was our last MLAC meeting, the area engineer, but the ODOT staff, he's manages all the engineers. And I think he's the one who comes out to a project and checks in with people. Yeah. He inspired a lot of confidence in me because it was well, this is what we're doing, and here's the timelines of all of it. And his ability to keep it all in his head was impressive.
Yeah, he had a whole list and could just give the rundown on every single one.
Yeah. So he felt I was wow, this guy's amazing. And then I was driving across the temporary bridge on 3 Mile Lane going into McMinnville, and I saw him, and I was oh, I know you. It felt like a celebrity sighting. Right.
That's hilarious.
But it gave me a reassurance too. I was oh, he's keeping an eye on this one too. Yeah. Well, today I was thinking a lot about, and I think that you will just appreciate this. So there was this horrific shooting in Texas at the school, right? Just all of us are, I think, rightly just horrified by it. And it keeps getting worse and worse, especially as the kids have memorial services. And I thought about how here in the county we have, and then there's conversations about how can we make schools safer? Is it controlling limiting gun sales? Is it limiting ages of who can own a firearm? What will happen at the federal level? And then I realized that in the county we have an ordinance on the books that says that the county will not enforce any new gun laws. And suddenly it made something that felt somewhere else really close to home. And I wasn't sure even how to handle that, wrestle with that, but it was disturbing to me, I guess.
I know I want to say no words, but there's so many words. And that was something that crossed my mind too. And I was having this conversation that in Oregon, as far as background checks and some of the things, we really have come a lot farther than some other states. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when they talk about, well, things changing on a federal level, people feel defensive, we don't want that. But Oregon does a lot of the things that people are talking about needing at a federal level. So that right. They're already in place and have been. And so that was comforting to me. But really, I've just searching my mind of what can be done, because it's not a question of whether something needs to be done. It's what actual steps. And going back to jumping through all those hoops and stuff, it's one thing to have ideas or be like, oh, well, what if we try this? But actually making it happen is a big deal. So even myself, I would love to know, like, what actual steps can elected officials or anyone do to make a real difference? Because talking is helpful, but it doesn't bring change.
No, it doesn't protect future kids, and it doesn't bring back the kids who are gone. Yeah. The thing that seems like everything has contentiousness to it, but changing that age at which you can purchase from 18 to 21 seems like a real, at least with mass shootings, right? That's often this young person category, and just making it harder for them seems like it has the potential to help, right? Like maybe it only protects one household or one school, but that's one school.
But a human
still,
life.
yeah.
Well, and there's scientific evidence that like your prefrontal cortex is not mature till you're 25.
Yeah.
You know, and our young people today are faced with so much. I mean, throughout history, each generation has been faced with different things, but we've been in a lot of ongoing crises, you know, and so then to have that access when there's not access to healthcare you may need is really incongruent with like, how are we channeling what we're able?
Right. One thing that I just had a phone conversation about earlier today was that when we're asking, okay, so you know, the protocol is supposed to be, you know, you get, when there's an active shooter, you get medics and EMTs as quickly as possible. You protect them, but you get them in because those minutes are really important. And we learned that unfortunately in Afghanistan and Iraq, right? Like that was where people learned that you can stop things right away and you can save people's lives, but the EMTs need to be safe. And I learned recently that we have the plan was developed at the county to essentially do the training and the equipping of EMTs and the coordination with law enforcement. So they've got the same radio channels. The plan was developed, but it hasn't been implemented in any way. And that felt like a thing that we can do, right? Is it improves the training for EMTs. It gives them the tools to be safe, and then potentially it's a potential lifesaver in these, you know, God forbid it happens scenarios.
Yeah, and that brings to mind, and I want to give a shout out to our Yamhill County Sheriff's Office. Amity contracts with them, and we had a horrific incident happen in our downtown area this last year. And during that, our officers responded. They called in the county, they called in OSP and other entities that, you know, I don't know all their official names, but the coordination and the work together was so good. And they kept our community safe. I brought this up. I went to one of the wildfire workshops and I talked to Sergeant Brand Young, but told him that the alerts worked for our community. And so I really think that we do have a lot of those tools. So implementing them further and getting everyone on board, that sounds like it could be really helpful. We already have a good foundation, but build on that. Totally.
So I was like, this is something we can do, right? If it's time or if it's tools or if it's staff, let's figure that part out. Yeah. And I was reminded, as I drove into the commissioner's office this morning, there was a big response on 3 Mile Lane. And I saw EMTs in ballistic vests. And I was like, oh, right. Our EMTs need to be safe in order to actually save lives, right?
And to remember that especially in these rural communities, a lot of those are volunteers. And they're literally volunteering their lives, putting their lives on the line. So anything we're able to bolster that, like, I'm just so grateful, you know, that there's people.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I also thought I should bring up is that we're having a discussion about Yamhill County is one of the last counties that has a term limits ordinance. And it's a funny situation because across the United States and at the federal level, there are term limits, right? Like you can only have 2 terms as a president, for example. The governor of the state of Oregon can only have 2 terms at a time. But it turns out that the state constitution specifically says that county elected officials can only be, it only gives 2 minimum requirements, and that's the number of requirements. You have to be 18 and have resided in the county of residence for 6 months in order to be this set of elected officials at the county level. And I realized that there are cities across the state that have term limits, but its cities can have term limits by the Oregon Constitution. So we're trying to determine now whether we repeal our county ordinance or we decide to accommodate or expect a challenge to it. So if you have any thoughts.
I personally, I'm on board with the repeal. I watched your last meeting, and when there is that precedence, as well as you're setting yourself up to be breaking the Oregon Constitution, which you vowed to uphold to the best of your ability, it seems like a no-brainer. But then what comes to mind is that the voters chose this, so that makes it a harder decision.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really smart in that when you're requesting public comment, the way wording it as of this is what we'd like to do and this is why. Mm-hmm. And this is what some other counties have found when they were in our situation. Because I don't think it's right that Yamhill County would keep those limits standing.
Right.
And then it also just doesn't make sense for the more administrative positions to be like, oh, you've been here, you're doing a great job, you know all the things, but you're done.
Yep, time to go away.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense to me either.
Although if there was coordination, most county departments have a deputy of some kind, right? Who's a longstanding employee. If there was coordination, it would be a perfect scenario to be like, I'm going to step down because I can't run again. You hire me to be your deputy and you run.
Have that understudy that's ready to step in, but then it's also on the voters to know that.
It is. Yeah, that's right. It is also on the voters to understand and know and to really see that. Yeah. I think that we've had some new testimony, some new public comment, and I expect that we'll hear some next week at I think it's really the first reading of the proposal to repeal the ordinance. I have thought, this was as you noted, this was something that was enacted by voters, the term limits. And on the previous occasion when the commissioner said, well, maybe we'll remove term limits. What do you think? Should we put this to a vote of the people? And the public comment came in, it sounds like dramatically against removing those term limits. And it makes me wonder whether this is a scenario where we still have time. We have until August where we could put it on the ballot as a proposal is, we, the commissioners, think that you should repeal the ordinance. And here's why. Here's our best case for the fact that this is unconstitutional. And it's an awkward thing because if we at the county believe it's unconstitutional, why would we keep it? But at the same time, voters did say, we want you to have term limits.
Yeah, it is tough. I kind of live by know better, do better. So maybe if the information is out there that like, yes, this was enacted, but this is why we think it's, but I also feel like as an elected commission, you do have the ability to see that as wrong and make an educated decision. Like you are representative of the people. So if it comes down that your commission says, no, we're making an educated decision, I think that's justified too, but it is kind of an awkward.
It is, and I think you're right in that the county voters say, we trust you to make our land use decisions. We trust you to make these budgetary decisions, and I don't know whether in that process they said, oh, we also trust you that in the event that you determine this thing that we enacted is unconstitutional, that we trust that you will do your best to remove it. It's like an extended anticipation, right? So we'll see. I don't know if I can get another vote for sending it out to voters, but I think that your instincts on it are correct, in that people have elected commissioners to make these decisions on their behalf too. So we'll see.
Well, also though, if you're having public comment, sometimes, and that's why I really appreciate people coming in and speaking with their concerns, because you only know your perspective and your way of thinking. And so sometimes someone comes in with new information and you're like, I didn't think of that. You're right. And so I would really encourage everyone, like, if you have elected officials, tell them what you think.
Absolutely. It's very helpful. I say, especially in situations where there's gray areas or there's nuance or the law is unclear, it is incredibly helpful to hear what people are thinking about it, because it really can, at least for me, and it sounds like for you, it really does change how we make the decisions. Yeah, which is great.
Always good to have more to think about.
Yes.
There's got to be a limit. No.
But speaking of term limits, we also now, bless you, have, our county clerk is resigning at the end of June. And so we will be determining whether to not take any action. And in the fall, on the ballot will be the clerk position to start a new 4-year term. He's 2 years out from running for he would have been 2 years out for running for re-election, but he couldn't because he was term limited out. And so that position will be on the fall ballot. And my understanding is that it's in August is when people can file to run for that position. If the commissioners don't take any action to appoint somebody new for his position, then Carrie Hinton, who's the chief deputy county clerk, will act and is capable of doing all of the clerk's officially designated responsibilities. So it's not like there won't be a clerk there, because every function will be capable of being handled by Carrie. What we could do, taking no action would not change anything. Carrie would be the person who's doing the role of clerk in the clerk's absence up through the 1st of January, when a new clerk will be sworn in. Mm-hmm. What we could do is we could appoint somebody to fill the role until a new clerk's term starts January 1st. A natural thing would be to appoint Carrie Hinton to that position, since she is the chief deputy county clerk. And we'll have that conversation. I was about to say later this month, but we're only, 10 hours left in this month. So later in June, we'll have the conversation about if the commissioners take any further action on it. So stay tuned.
And I'm sure staff would be able to give you input if there's preferences or needs.
Yeah. I think from the administrative side of things, it's always better to have an official clerk than to have somebody in a deputy role who's acting as the clerk. So doing an appointment of the deputy clerk to the acting clerk position is the administratively the preferred option. It gives that person the very clear authority in making those decisions.
Not only that, you can step up their understudy so they have a backup.
Right. Yes, exactly. Keep it moving along. Keep it moving along.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm kind of jealous that you're able to be outside. I thought about bringing my computer, but we have Online Northwest still pulling fiber, which is great. It's also a little noisy outside here.
That makes sense. Well, I think we just have irrigation sounds out here.
Heard a bit.
Yes. Well, that's all that I have today, except that I will say that we do continue to see case counts go up in Yamhill County for COVID. COVID's not over. And I will say that I also continue to hear from people who are suffering the effects of long COVID. And I really don't wish that upon really anybody. So be careful out there. Don't treat it like it's the cold.
Right. One thing though, so this was interesting. My sister actually tested positive recently, and she's young and healthy, but she was offered antiviral treatment by her primary care. So just to put it out there, if that's something, if you do test positive and you're sick, or you're worried, talk to your primary care, because those are more readily available than they ever have been. I'm not a doctor. I'm not recommending you need to make your own healthcare decisions, but it is an option that anyone can seek out and look into now.
That's right. That's a really good point. And I remember that at some point I don't remember what month it was, there was one course each week, one dosage of Paxlovid, the antiviral, in Yamhill County available in any week. And now it is available. But that's a really good point, that especially if folks are testing positive through at-home test, that you might think, oh, well, I'll just quarantine. But taking that further action and checking in with a primary care doctor is a really, really good thing to do. Yeah, these times have changed, so.
Right. And I'm thankful for all the progress that has been made. And there were so many unknowns that are now knowns, but it doesn't reduce the fact that we need to be conscientious and careful. And long COVID, we don't know. We don't have 5, 10, 15-year studies on this. So
no, it's very, very true. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, any closing thoughts?
No, thank you for having me today.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And have a good week and stay safe.
You too.